What's good, YouTube peeps and barbecue freaks? Thank you guys for stopping by today. Well, today's video is going to be the last video in the series of what I pack for competitions. Now, in previous videos, I've shown you the containers that I use to carry my rubs, my injections, my sauces, things like that. I've showed you my wash station, the bin that I carry everything in, and miscellaneous items that I pack for competition. In this video, I'm going to answer the question that I get asked a lot: how do I transport my meat? What do I use to put my meat in to take for competitions? I'm going to show you the bins that I use. I'm going to talk a little bit about the checklist or the process that I go through when packing for a comp. And, hopefully you guys find this useful. So I'm going to show you the bins that I use, the cooler that I put them all in, and hopefully you find it useful. You ready? Let's get started. All right, so these here are the bins that I use to transport my meat. I use a couple of different sizes. As you can tell, this one is a lot deeper than this one. But we'll start with this one here first. So this one, this Tupperware bin that I use, I actually picked it up at my local HEB. And I think I paid about $7 for this. And each one of them, they're actually the same width, the same length. The only difference is one is deeper than the other. This one is a whole lot deeper than this one. But these work perfect for after I trim my brisket. I'll throw it in here, and that brisket fits perfect in there. If you watch my last video, my cook-off video from Victoria, Texas, you'll see clips in there of the brisket actually in the container. And there's plenty of room to inject it, inject it, season it, do everything that I need to do inside of the bin. So once I trim my brisket up, I'll throw it in here. I'll put the lid on, and it's ready to go. So for the smaller one, I use a smaller one to hold my brisket. I'll use a smaller one to hold my ribs. And so usually, I can fit one brisket in here, and I can fit about 4 or 5 racks of ribs in here. So this, one bin actually works perfect for loading my meats in. For my chicken, I use this one that's a lot deeper, as you can see. And the reason I do that is because not only does this hold my meat, but I will also use this to brine my meat, my chickens. I'll put all my chickens in here and transport them that way. And it's deep enough that I could take my brine, dump it in here, put it back in the cooler, let it sit overnight and brine. So this actually works perfect for that. So again, for the smaller one, I think I paid roughly $7 or $8. And the bigger one, I paid about 11 or 12 bucks, which is really, really cheap. And these, man, they're very well built. They've lasted me quite a while. So a really good investment. Again, the lid is the same thing on the big one as it is the small one. It actually, it's the same lid for both. So these are the containers that I use to carry my meat in. So I'll put my brisket again in one, and my ribs in another one, and then I'll put my chicken in this one that's a lot deeper. So it serves twofold. Again, I could carry my meat and or carry my chicken in here and brine it. So once I do that, I'm going to talk a little bit about that process in just a second. But once I trim my meat up, I get the lid on, and then I throw them in the cooler. I'm going to show you the cooler that I use and how everything fits in there. It just makes it really easy to transport my meats. And you can use whatever containers you like. I like these because they're easy to clean, they're durable, they're not expensive, and it just absolutely works perfect. So these are the containers that I use for my meats. Again, I use one of the smaller ones for my brisket, one small one for my ribs, and then the bigger one for my chicken. I'm going to show you the cooler that I put them in, and then I'm just going to kind of talk a little bit about the process that I go through when so if you saw the last video where I touched on like miscellaneous items, and even the one before that where I talked about my brines or injections that I take, I make a checklist each time of my meat just to make sure I don't forget anything, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. But I wanted to show you the containers that I use to put my meat in and transport them in. It just, it's just really, really convenient. I'll show you the cooler that I used, and then again, talk a little bit about the process that I go through. All right, so once I put my meat in my containers, I put them inside this cooler here. This is a Coleman's. You can use any cooler you like. This just happens to work really good for me. This one has, you know, tires on the bottom that I can roll. It has a handle here, of course, you know, that I can just, once I put my meat in here, I pop the handle up, and then I could just roll it anywhere that I need to go. So usually what happens is I'll take my cooler. It's a little dirty, so forgive me, I have to clean it. But once I pop it up, I'll take my containers, and I always put the way that I load it is I'll take one of the smaller ones with my ribs. My ribs go on the bottom. And I'll show you the inside in just a second. I'll take my bigger one with my chicken, that goes second. And then the last one with my brisket goes on top. And the reason I do that is because when I get to a comp, the first meat that I handle is my brisket. So it's right on top. So we'll season that up, inject it, and get it ready, you know, to sit overnight. So since I do that first, I always try to make sure that I put that on top. And then the next meat I handle at a comp or deal with is my chicken, which is, you know, brining it. So, you know, it's just, for me, it just makes sense to put the ribs on bottom. The ribs I don't touch until the morning of the cook-off. So that can stay at the bottom. But I get these in here, and they fit absolutely perfect in here. Let me lift this up real quick. Hopefully it doesn't fall. But so I got them in here. And also what I'll put in here, sometimes I'll put like my butter, anything that I need to keep on ice, I throw on here. And then after I put my bins in here, I put ice on top to keep my meat cool. And that's it. I mean, it's pretty simple. Let me adjust this real quick. There you go. It's really simple, really convenient. This allows me to carry my meats fairly easy. Again, it's got the wheels on the bottom that, you know, I can roll with. So this cooler and these bins, they just actually work perfect together. Then the bins fit perfect in the cooler. So those are the bins that I use. This is the cooler that I put them in. You know, I just really recommend finding the bins that work for you. And if you can find a cooler where you can put them all in, and you know, if it has wheels, great. It just makes life so much easier. So that's how I pack my meat when I'm going to a comp. And I'm going to talk a little bit real quick about the checklist that I go down and when I'm prepping each meat and packing each meat. All right, so those are the bins that I use. That's the cooler that I put everything in to transport in. Now, what I do, and this is what I would highly recommend you do if you're just starting out, and this kind of goes back to the last video that I made where I talked about like the miscellaneous items. I make a checklist, and I always start with my brisket. I'll figure out, what do I need for my brisket? What rubs do I need? What injection do I need? Do I need chicken broth, foil, anything that I need to cook brisket, a foil pan, whatever I'm going to need, I make a list of that. And then as I put it in my bin, like you saw in the last video with the miscellaneous items, as I put it in my bin, check it off. Then I move to my ribs. You know, I make a list to make sure that I got my butter, my honey, my brown sugar, my rubs, my sauce, whatever I need to cook ribs, make a checklist, check it off as you put it either in your bin, or if it's a rub, check it off as you put it in whatever container you're using to carry your rubs. Same thing with injections. And I do the same thing with my chicken. I make a checklist. I'm gonna need my butter, my injection, my spritz, whatever I'm gonna need for my chicken, whatever I'm using, my rubs, my sauce, whatever I need to cook that chicken, I check it off. Now, sometimes it's the same thing, like a sauce. I will use the same sauce on ribs and brisket. So I still put it on there twice just to make sure I'm not forgetting anything. And that's what I would recommend if you're just starting out doing. And you get to a point, I've got to a point where I don't use the checklist a whole lot anymore, just because I done it so much. But if you're just starting out, I highly, highly recommend that you do that, that you get in the habit of that, so you do not forget anything that you're going to need to cook your meats. Now, another thing that I highly, highly recommend, in IBCA, you can pre-trim your meats. You cannot season, inject, or marinate, or brine. You can't do any of that to your meat, but you can pre-trim. You could trim your brisket up, you could trim your ribs up, you could trim your chicken up. You just cannot season, brine, or anything like that. I highly, highly, highly recommend that you do that. You can do that at home before you get to the comp. Highly recommend you do that for a couple of reasons. One, it just makes it so much easier when you finally get out there, you get set up. Like on a Friday now, when we get out there, we get set up. There's not a whole lot to do because my meats are already trimmed. So it's just really convenient to do it at home. Not only that, sanitation-wise, it just makes sense to do it at home. Let's take chicken, for example. We all know how bad chicken can be for you if you're not, or if you mishandle it. So at home, I'm able to, with soap and water, clean my cutting board at home, clean my knives at home, everything that I've used to prep my meat. You're able to clean that at home. It's one less thing you have to worry about at a comp, and it just makes life so much easier. So if you're just starting out, doing IBCAs, and I believe Lone Star is the same way. I believe in Lone Star you can pre-trim. You just can't season anything. KCBS, I've only done one, and I'm not 100% sure. So someone can leave a comment if you do KCBS, and I know Brother Rich and some of you guys out there do KCBS. So if you would leave a comment below letting the folks know if they're able to do that for KCBS, I'd appreciate it. But it's just so much easier to trim all that up. It just makes life so much better. I highly recommend it. For the first probably 2 years, I was doing all my trimming on site, and let me tell you, it's not fun. It's such a hassle. So again, highly recommend you do all your trimming at home if you're doing IBCA or Lone Star. So again, that's what I used to carry all my meats in. That's my cooler. Again, start with the checklist, check it off, make sure you're not forgetting anything. I hope you guys found this video useful. I will see you guys next time. Take care.